Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's all good and great and wonderful. It is fantastic here, and today we are going to talk about Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. Now, I already recorded a video for this for the gaming channel. I did an unboxing and overview. I just haven't had a chance to edit it. Personal projects took the front seat so I could get those out of the way. I finished those this morning and hit order, so it's going to be 3 weeks before I see them. So I got plenty of time now. Hopefully I'll be able to get some new videos out on the gaming channel because it's been a graveyard over there. So let's just talk about it here today because I just received this last Tuesday. So when you're watching this video, that was August, hell, I don't know, 11th, 10th, something like that. And that was roughly 6 weeks after it was in retail stores and a good month after everybody else had already received it. So I'm way late to this, but I want to talk about it anyway because I received it on Tuesday. I played it 3 times on Wednesday evening at game night. I played it solo on Thursday. I played it solo on Friday. I played it solo on Saturday. I played with M on Saturday, and then I played twice with M yesterday. So I've played 9 total games in about 6 days. And I have some thoughts. The first one is, I like it. I like it. It's pretty much exactly what I wanted. It is a game that feels Terraforming Mars-y, but it plays better with 2 players than Terraforming Mars. And that was really why I got excited about this, was 2-player. Em and I are here every day, all day, together, and playing 2-player games is something we really enjoy doing together. So when I found out this had a 2-player mode, I decided to try it. So today we're going to talk pretty much exclusively about 2-player. We'll talk a little about the rest of the game. But the rules don't ever really explicitly call out how to play 2-player. There is a 2-player co-op mode in the back of the book on page 18, I believe. There is a little explanation of how to play 2-player co-op, but it doesn't say you can't play 2-player regularly, and you can. That's what I'm here to report. It works pretty darn well. So, if you're completely unfamiliar with this product and what I'm talking about, this is a standalone product from Terraforming Mars. It is a card game, is what they bill it as, but it's not any more of a card game than regular Terraforming Mars. You still have player boards with tokens. You still have a main board with trackers and tiles. It doesn't have any less physical components than the main game. It just doesn't have a board like competition mechanic. You're not placing tiles on a board in any strategic manner. You do place ocean tiles on this board. They look completely different than the Terraforming Mars ocean tiles because really all you're doing is flipping a stack of random tiles and putting them on a board. They don't, where on this board doesn't matter. You don't need the board for that. You could just flip them over and discard them. It does the same exact thing. But as far as, you know, is this a card game versus a board game? It's really not a card game. It doesn't adhere to strictly card game rules. There's tons of components in this box. You have plenty of cubes. You have plenty of player cubes. Again, you have the trackers. I am showing you, by the way, this is the Kickstarter edition, and so I have some special items like the 2-layer player boards so that cubes stay in here without falling off when you bump the table. The Kickstarter edition also came with these cute little cube trays, which work out really well, and we got a bunch of extra promos. So there's some spiffiness in this version that isn't in the regular version. But besides that, it is an amalgamation, I think that's the word I want to use, of Terraforming Mars and Race for the Galaxy. Or, people say that. Like, this is Race for the Galaxy, Terraforming Mars. And I get the comparison because there are, like, not role selection, what do you call this? Action selection or phase selection. Because it has a phase selection mechanic and because it is a card game, people go Race for the Galaxy. And because it's space themed. But really, besides this action selection mechanic or this phase selection mechanic, I would say there's really no comparison. That's it. And there's lots of other games that have this mechanic. For instance, you know, Puerto Rico, like I think was the first that had this mechanic. And then San Juan, which is the Puerto Rico card game, has this mechanic. And so I don't necessarily see the comparison between this and Race for the Galaxy. What I do see the comparison is between this and Terraforming Mars. That's much more obvious to me. And the reason is that most of the cards in this game are Terraforming Mars cards that have been retrofitted to this system. So when you're playing this game, you will find cards in here that are some of your absolute favorite cards, like Optimal Arrow Braking. That's in Terraforming Mars. It's also in this game. It does something completely different because this game works differently. And the way this game works is, as I described earlier, there are phases. There are 5 of them, and each player has a hand of cards corresponding to these 5, and simultaneously each of us picks one and reveals, and those are the phases that we take for the turn. The phases are development. Development phase gives you green cards or production cards. These are things that are going to give you more heat or give you more steel or money or plants, or in this version, cards. Cards are a production. Then we have construction. Construction is going to be how you play blue cards. Just like in Terraforming Mars, blue cards have effects and have actions printed on them. Also, construction lets you play red cards, and red cards are events. Very similar, you know, setup there for Terraforming Mars, other than in this version, event cards, like the Comet, has a tag on it. It doesn't go face down, so you get to keep that tag for the rest of the game. So that's cool. Phase 3 is actions. Actions are things like things that have the keyword action on them, like Development Center. Pay 2 heat to draw a card. That is an action. You'll be able to use that card during the action step. Just like Terraforming Mars, action cards are once per round, but if you've taken the action step, you'll get to do things, you'll get to do an additional action. So we'll talk about that in a second. Steps 4 is production. Unlike Terraforming Mars, we don't get a production every round. We only get it when somebody chooses it. And so after you've already spent all of your things, after you've done construction and you've done development and you've done actions, all the things that might require you to spend your resources, then you're going to get to gain resources. You'll gain your mega credits and your heats and your plants and your cards. And one of the big separations between this and Terraforming Mars is, if you notice on the player board, there is only spaces for mega credits, heat, and plants, but we still have steel and titanium. That's because you still have steel and titanium production, but instead of keeping actual cubes, instead of tracking how much of each you have, steel and titanium just serve as discounts for cards. So you'll get a discount, and it works the same as Terraforming Mars. Last phase is research. This is how you draw cards. So unlike Terraforming Mars, there is no draw and draft. There is no, you know, passing cards around a table trying to tune a strategy. That doesn't exist. This is just straight up drawing cards and hoping to get something that synergizes with something else and building that engine. And it feels like a lot of the time you are going to be drawing, you know, a ridiculous amount of cards trying to chase something, because like Terraforming Mars, this has over 200 unique cards, so there's no duplicates in this deck, and it might be a long time before you see a card that plugs into your synergy. Now, that being said, there are cards that are extremely similar. There are some cards in here where there's 3 or 4 that are almost identical. They have slightly different costs, or they have slightly different payout. One might give you a little bit of production, one might give you a little bit of production plus 2 plants. So there are plenty of options, you just might have to dig for them. And so that's why we have card production. You're going to have the ability to draw a bunch of cards, and additionally, every card is worth 3 mega credits, so you can always chuck cards whenever you want to get 3 mega credits. And so that's a super important part of the game. And if you've played San Juan, that's going to feel really familiar, because that, you know, that's how that game works. So what I've got out of this box is a tightly tuned Terraforming Mars engine that also has a fair bit of randomness because you are drawing so many of these cards. But what that means is that it works really well 2-player, because we're both in the same boat. We're not drafting and passing hands. We're not doing we're not having to worry about board placement type restrictions, which doesn't really happen that often in Terraforming Mars in 2-player. But in this, we're both fighting this randomness engine to try to get the cards that we want in a limited amount of time. It works really well. Now, I will say, what we have done is a 2-player variant that I found online, because each player has because in 2-player, you're only going to be doing at most 2 actions per round. What we've been doing is shuffling up a spare set of cards and flipping one of those as well. So each, I guess, turn, we're going to get 3 actions max. And that seems to help things along a little bit. Otherwise, you're just doing a lot of flip tiles, do things. And in a 3-player game where somebody already has their engine set up, or in a 2-player game where somebody already has their engine set up. For instance, in the last 2 games that Em and I played together, I had an engine going where I was just alternating action production every round. And I had cards in my hand that were definitely playable during development and construction. They just weren't playable enough for me to care to take those actions. And so if Em and I both get locked in that sort of position, nobody's ever going to take development and construction. It can get a little bit awkward, I guess. So it's nice to have that third hand kind of helping out in those types of situations. Early game, not so much important. It just kind of, sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses, but it does add a little bit of extra oomph and pushes the game along a little bit for 2-player. So I think I'm going to continue using that variant, you know, in the foreseeable future. The only other thing I have to say about this product is that the board sucks. It's absolutely terrible, and I covered that in the review that I'm going to be publishing on the main channel. It's far too small for the cubes that are given. It's too prone to being jostled. It's too slick, so things move around on here really easy. It's just not really worth it. Oh, and putting these ocean tiles, you're supposed to put these ocean tiles all out at the start of the game and then flip. And so when you're trying to grab these ocean tiles in the middle, you have to kind of move everything out of the way. I don't like the board, and I'm working on a solution of my own because this just doesn't cut it for me. The last thing is the promos that were provided as part of the Kickstarter. I think we ended up getting something like 8 or so promo corporations, and they are significantly better than what's in the box. So keep that in mind. I mean, for most people, I don't think it's that big of a deal, but some of those corporations are... The corporations don't seem particularly well balanced. Let's just say that. And I think even some of the base game, you know, what's in the box, in the retail box edition, some of those aren't necessarily well balanced. But what do I know? I've only played 9 games, so I think that'll kind of shake out in the long run. But overall, I think that I am extremely satisfied with my purchase, considering that what I wanted was 2-player Terraforming Mars, and what I got was 2-player Terraforming Mars that is actually enjoyable to play. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to claim that base game 2-player isn't fun, but for me it's just not as enjoyable, and I'd rather wait for a third. With this, I feel justified at 2 or 3. I played 3 games with 4 players, and that felt fine too. I think that 3 is probably going to be the sweet spot for this one, but I'm really happy with it so far. So, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition from Stronghold Games, Fricks Games. Let me know if you have any comments or questions down below. Let me know if you have any thoughts about the promo corporations, because I'm curious to know if my observations about them are way out of whack. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is harbinger. It is a noun meaning a forerunner or warning sign of a future event or trend. The asteroid's shadow blotted out the sun as it speeded on a collision course with Earth, a harbinger of impending doom. Harbinger, H-A-R-B-I-N-G-E-R. I've always liked that word. It's so much better than foreshadowing, or I guess foreshadowing isn't necessarily literally foreshadowing. It's generally more subtle, as harbinger is more like in your face. Is that correct?